Every empire is built on something unspoken. Pain, ambition, or a lie so beautiful that even its architect forgets the truth. Grayson Vale's empire shimmered with opulence, but beneath its marble floors and million-dollar views, something was always waiting to crack. Have you ever walked into a space so saturated with secrets that they seemed to throb in the air, like they had a pulse of their own? A lavish ballroom in the heart of Brighton, crystal chandeliers glinting like fallen stars, tuxedoed waiters weaving through the crowd with flutes of champagne, and in the center of it all, Grayson Vale, the charming millionaire, holding court while proudly showing off the breathtaking young woman on his arm. The music swelled, laughter floated, until the doors swung wide open, and there she stood, his obviously pregnant wife, flanked by two wide-eyed twin boys who bolted forward, shouting, "Dad!" The tension snapped like a live wire, and the whole evening exploded into scandal. Grayson Vale wasn't born into wealth. To his credit, he had a gift for shaping his modest beginnings into a captivating rags-to-riches tale that dazzled reporters and captivated social circles. By now, his name shimmered among the elite of San Francisco, particularly in Brighton. His sprawling estate on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific featured not only a lagoon-like pool, but also a high-tech golf course, private tennis courts, and a household staff trained at the most prestigious hospitality academies. For years, whispers claimed Grayson had exchanged wisdom with Warren Buffett at an Omaha investment summit, or outmaneuvered Mark Cuban in a high-stakes tech startup acquisition. The truth was often far less thrilling, but Grayson had never been one to dispel a thrilling rumor. He fed off the perception of power just as much as any real success he had achieved. But beneath the dazzle, there was a quiet void that gnawed at him. As a boy, he watched his father, Henry Vale, exhaust himself running a modest auto repair shop, fixing engines and dreaming beyond their means. Determined to escape the limitations of small-town life, Grayson chased wealth with ruthless focus. His first million came from flipping neglected properties across downtown San Francisco. From there, he founded Vale Equity, an investment firm that soared during a bullish market. With money and prestige within reach, something still felt missing. He longed for validation, admiration, and yes, love in all its forms. So when he met Camille Ashford, heiress of a storied banking dynasty, her serene grace and sharp mind captivated him. They dated intensely for 2 years before Grayson proposed aboard a yacht off the coast of the Amalfi Coast, surrounded by the global elite. The wedding a year later was a spectacle, outshining most Hollywood dreams. Fireworks blooming over the sea, capped with a surprise performance by a Grammy-winning artist. Their marriage felt like something plucked from a fairy tale. He was the self-made billionaire. She, the polished heiress. Together, Grayson and Camille were a power couple that lit up every room they entered. And yet, Grayson's gaze had never fully settled. Whether it was the pressure to prove himself worthy of Camille's blue-blooded world or a ceaseless craving for novelty, he couldn't keep his wandering tendencies at bay. And on the eve of the most anticipated party of the summer, he would make sure all eyes were once again fixed on him. Though not in the way he imagined. Invitations to Grayson's annual Vale Gala arrived in heavy gold-embossed envelopes, each one containing a pass engraved in silver. Hollywood royalty, tech tycoons, pro athletes, and the children of old money all fought for a coveted spot. The event was held on a warm Saturday evening in June, perfectly timed after the day's heat had mellowed, when the breeze carried the scent of jasmine through the sprawling estate. Caterers bustled to finalize a decadent spread. Long tables in crisp white linens, adorned with towering floral arrangements by famed florist Lisette Moravec. Fairy lights traced the outlines of the manicured gardens, and an 8-piece jazz ensemble began to tune their instruments by the estate's central fountain. Guests knew they were in for a spectacle the moment they passed through the wrought iron gates. Camille had been expected to co-host the event with Grayson. They usually stood at the main entrance, welcoming celebrities and CEOs with effortless charm. But that night, murmurs swept through the crowd. Where was Camille? Gossip enthusiasts craned their necks toward the circular driveway, waiting for a glimpse of her Rolls-Royce. Nothing. Instead, there was only Grayson, dashing in a tailored midnight blue tuxedo, his dark hair slicked back in a style evoking old Hollywood icons. At his side stood Alina Petrova, introduced to most as Vale Equity's new events coordinator. She was striking, tall, sharp cheekbones, flawless skin, and a subtle Eastern European accent that gave her an air of exotic allure. Dressed in a dramatic red gown with a plunging neckline, Alina drew stares everywhere she moved. It was rumored her role at Vale Equity extended far beyond scheduling parties. Whispers of dinners at Spago, business trips to Rome, even joyrides in Grayson's private helicopter to Sonoma had long circulated in social circles. But nothing had ever been confirmed, until now. Clinging to Grayson's arm, Alina's laughter floated across the veranda. And Grayson? He basked in the attention, smirking and winking at guests who watched the couple with knowing expressions. The bold display only added fuel to the rumors. Where was Camille? The celebration surged forward. Champagne flowed, hors d'oeuvres vanished from silver platters, and the jazz band's sultry melodies curled through the warm evening air. Playing the charming host to perfection, Grayson led Alina through cluster after cluster of VIPs. They exchanged pleasantries with actor Morgan Tate's manager, shared a laugh with the CFO of Volt Energy, and paused to compliment fashion mogul Celeste Rue, resplendent in a vintage Chanel gown that sparkled in the moonlight. But just as the crowd settled into its rhythm, a ripple of silence swept across the entrance. Heads turned. A new figure appeared in the foyer, framed by the harsh brightness of the entrance lights. It was Camille, pregnant, glowing, and visibly seething. She wore a simple yet graceful cream gown that hugged her form, accentuating her growing belly. Her very presence commanded attention. And she wasn't alone. On either side of her stood two young boys about 6 years old, both dark-haired and wide-eyed. Each held tightly to one of her arms, their gazes scanning the room with a mix of nervous energy and wonder. The silence that rippled across the room was absolute. Even the jazz band faltered, their rhythm slipping away. Then, with a voice laced in tightly restrained fury, Camille said, "Boys, do you see your father?" Without a pause, both boys, Liam and Caleb, stepped forward, then took off running, calling out in unison, "Dad, Dad!" Their voices, clear and full of innocence, cut through the glittering pretense of the gala like a lightning strike. Some guests gasped audibly, hands half raised to their mouths, while others simply stared, frozen in disbelief. Grayson's expression cracked open, the confident host replaced in an instant by a man caught between two lives unraveling at once. As Liam and Caleb wrapped their small arms around his waist, the tuxedo he wore, so meticulously chosen, suddenly looked ill-fitting, almost like a costume meant for someone else. The final crack in the room's composure came when Camille stepped forward, brushing past Alina's stunned form and facing Grayson directly. "I believe you invited me to this little party, darling," she said, her voice clear and cutting. "I just figured it was time you met your sons." The room froze, a perfect, scandal-stained snapshot. Grayson's face drained of color. Alina's practiced smile vanished like smoke. Dozens of phones appeared, some openly, others subtly, as cameras clicked or started recording. Half the guests were already whispering and texting. The night's real entertainment had just begun. Grayson's reaction was a chaotic mix of shock, guilt, and disbelief. He stammered, "Cat Camille, this isn't..." But the words collapsed before forming anything coherent. Liam and Caleb clung to the front of his tuxedo, their small hands wrinkling the pristine fabric, their faces looking up at him, uncertain, hopeful, and quietly relieved. They were finally seeing the man they had been told was their father, a possibility they hadn't dared believe until this moment. Alina tried to remain composed. She managed a brittle smile and gave a curt nod. "Camille, how lovely to meet you," she said, voice icy but thinly veiled. "I've heard so much about you." Her hand trembled as she lifted her champagne flute. It was one thing to suspect there was a wife somewhere in the background. It was another thing entirely to be confronted with that wife. And 2 children, at the most glamorous event of the season. Camille locked eyes with her, ignoring Grayson's attempts to interrupt. "I'm sure you have," she replied, her tone edged with steel. She turned to the boys and knelt slightly. "Why don't you two go find Aunt Violet inside? She promised to show you the fish in the fountain, remember?" With some hesitation, Liam and Caleb nodded and headed off toward the house, glancing back a few times as if needing reassurance. But their mother's quiet certainty carried them forward. The moment the twins disappeared, the entire gathering seemed to collectively exhale. Camille turned her attention back to Grayson, her gaze darting between him and Alina. "I've had enough of your lies," she said, her voice low but unwavering. "I'm done hiding. You wanted to parade your mistress in front of your friends, your investors, your adoring fans? Well, now you get to explain your whole personal life, right here, all at once. Congratulations," she added with scathing clarity. "You've made quite the spectacle." Before Grayson could form a response, Camille brushed past him, shoulders squared, chin lifted, like a queen who had just stripped a traitorous king of his crown. A pulse of energy surged through the room as the guests absorbed the explosive revelation. Grayson stood frozen in place, 1,000 eyes drilling into him with a mix of judgment and voyeuristic fascination. He could feel the veneer of control, the one he'd polished for years, crack and peel under the spotlight. Every calculated move, every curated image, collapsed under the weight of Camille's truth. This wasn't just public embarrassment. It was a personal unmasking in the worst possible way. In mere seconds, the gala shifted from a glittering celebration to a hotbed of whispered scandal. Former allies, admirers, and business associates now observed Grayson with the fascination of an audience at a high-stakes drama. Socialite Colette Fairbanks, known for her flair for gossip, leaned into a clutch of aspiring actresses and fanned herself dramatically. "She's pregnant, too," she exclaimed. "Did you see that bump? Has she been hiding all this time?" Eyes flicked toward Alina, who attempted to remain composed, sipping her champagne with exaggerated poise, but her flushed cheeks betrayed her panic. Some guests offered her faint, almost pitying smiles. Most simply stared, their curiosity laced with judgment, as if she were a performer who had suddenly gone off script. Grayson, attempting to regain control, forced a smile and continued greeting guests. He murmured quick apologies for family complications and tried steering people deeper into the event, toward the music, the drinks, anything but the confrontation they had just witnessed. But the murmurs only grew louder. Even the jazz band shifted to a slow, tentative number, their upbeat rhythm lost in the weight of the room's tension. Eventually, Grayson slipped away, climbing a grand marble staircase toward his private study on the second floor. He needed space, either alone or with Alina, to think, to breathe, to regain some footing. Staff moved quietly through the chaos, refilling champagne flutes, urging guests toward the opulent buffet. But all eyes followed Grayson's retreating form. Some whispered that a second explosion, a screaming match or teary confession, might erupt behind closed doors. In the quiet of his study, Grayson collapsed into a leather chair and buried his face in his hands. Reality crashed in like a rogue wave. He'd always prided himself on control. His empire, his image, his personal life. And in one entrance, Camille had unraveled it all. He felt exposed in a way he never had before. Not in the press, not in negotiations. This was different. This was raw. This was personal. He thought back to the night he met Alina at a Veil equity event in Prague. Her ambition, her fire, her allure, he hadn't meant to let it go this far. But the thrill had been undeniable, irresistible. Now that thrill teetered on the edge of costing him everything. A soft knock broke the silence. Grayson looked up, half expecting Alina. But it wasn't her. It was Lucas Chang, his longtime personal assistant. Tall, composed, and fiercely discreet, Lucas was the person Grayson turned to when the situation called for strategic damage control. "Sir, I figured I'd find you here," Lucas said gently. "Would you like me to escort Miss Petrova off the premises? Or—" Grayson shook his head. "No, let's not escalate things more than they already are. What's the reaction downstairs?" Lucas hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "As expected, it's become the highlight of the evening. Many guests are stunned. Some have already left. Others seem to be hanging around, hoping for more developments. Camille is by the fountain with her sister and your sons. She seems resolute." Grayson swallowed hard. He knew he owed Camille a conversation, but the thought of it, especially in the middle of what was meant to be his defining social event, filled him with dread. "All right, give me a moment. I'll go speak to her." Lucas gave a small nod. "Very well, sir." With that, he slipped out of the room. Grayson took one last moment to center himself, walking toward the study's large window. The garden below glimmered under the moonlight, laughter and music floating upward like the night hadn't just been shattered. but the air was heavy, charged. He knew instinctively that tonight would change everything. Not just in Brighton. The ripple would spread far beyond. He pressed a hand against the cool glass. The laughter felt unreal now, distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. Somewhere between the champagne and the stairs, he had stopped being the man people admired and started becoming the man they whispered about. The weight of it crushed against his chest, not because of the scandal, but because of the look Camille had given him. Like she didn't recognize him anymore. Like she didn't want to. For a fleeting moment, an old memory flickered in his mind. His father standing at the front door, suitcase in hand, while a younger Grayson hid behind the staircase banister, too afraid to cry out. He remembered the silence that followed, the years of pretending it hadn't broken them. And now, watching Camille turn away from him in front of their sons, the echo of that abandonment clawed back to life. It wasn't just guilt, it was fear. Fear that history was repeating itself. And this time, he was the one walking out. He steadied his breath and made his way back down the staircase, pushing past clusters of hushed conversations and anxious faces. Finally, he found Camille standing near the estate's grand stone fountain, where marble cherubs poured water into a basin lined with flickering lights. Liam and Caleb stood to the side, watched over by Camille's sister, Madeline Ashford. Madeline threw Grayson a sharp look but kept the boys engaged, pointing out the lazy swim of orange and gold koi fish. Camille turned to meet his gaze before he reached her. The rage she'd shown earlier was gone, replaced by a composed, frigid calm that pierced him deeper than fury ever could. There was something about the way she stood, arms folded, shoulders back, that reminded him of why he had fallen for her in the first place. Not because she was beautiful, but because she was unshakable. "You wanted to talk?" she said, arms folded across her chest, emphasizing the curve of her pregnancy. Grayson cleared his throat. "Yes, Camille, this isn't how I wanted you to come back into my life. I was going to set up a time for us to talk." "To talk?" she cut in sharply. "What were you going to do? Put me on your calendar like a business deal. I'm your wife, Grayson. I'm carrying your children. I shouldn't need an appointment." He took a breath, his eyes shifting toward the twins. "I know you've been in Europe with them. You left without telling me where or why. I tried to reach you, but you never replied." Camille's eyes blazed. "And you're wondering why I didn't respond? Every time I tried to hold our marriage together, I found something else. Another dinner. Another whispered trip. Another headline featuring your glamorous event coordinator. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Grayson felt the shame like a stone lodged in his chest. He struggled to strike a conciliatory tone. "I made mistakes. Big ones. I'm not trying to deny that. But you left without giving me a chance." "You vanished," Grayson said, voice cracking. "You took Liam and Caleb, and I had no idea you were pregnant again, until tonight." Camille inhaled sharply, steadying herself. "You knew we were trying for another baby. Maybe you didn't know the exact moment it happened, but you knew it was possible. And still, you went ahead with this affair. Did you even stop to think about how it would affect me? Our sons? This new child?" Grayson looked away, shame crawling up his neck. "I was lost, lonely. Camille, you come from a world I'll never belong to. Sometimes I still feel like that mechanic's kid, drowning in a tuxedo that doesn't quite fit." She softened, only for a breath. "Grayson, I never cared about your background. That's why I married you. I saw your drive, your heart, but somewhere along the way, your ambition eclipsed your heart." Their eyes locked, tension thick between them, neither willing to be the first to blink. At last, Camille spoke again, her voice tight. "I'm here because I'm done hiding. I won't raise the boys on hush money while you prance around with Alina in the press. I won't let you live two lives anymore. You either fight for your family, or you lose us." Before Grayson could respond, a burst of camera flashes exploded from behind the hedges. Paparazzi, no doubt tipped off, had breached the estate. Security sprang into motion, moving to block lenses and remove the intruders. Camille's eyes blazed. "Handle it," she snapped, "or I will." Grayson quickly turned, waving down the guards and issuing swift, urgent orders. Meanwhile, Camille took Liam and Caleb's hands and headed toward the house. "Are we going home now, Mom?" Caleb asked, his voice shaking just slightly. "Soon," she whispered, giving their hands a gentle squeeze. But even she wasn't sure where home truly was anymore. While Grayson battled the fallout, Alina stood frozen near the bar, nervously downing champagne. Socialite Colette Fairbanks slinked up beside her, the scent of gossip practically radiating off her. "Oh, Alina, darling," she purred. "What a disaster. Did you know this would happen? His wife and children showing up like something out of a soap opera?" Alina stiffened, pasting on a thin smile. "I'm afraid I'm not included in those kinds of conversations." She turned to step away, but Colette pressed in closer. "Surely you knew he was married? You must have heard something." Alina's patience snapped, her voice cracked with restrained fury. "Grayson's personal life is his business. Excuse me." And with that, she stormed off, heels crunching against gravel as she made her way through the garden. She ducked behind a rose-covered trellis, the floral scent cloying under the humid night. Her heart pounded in her chest. The image of those boys, those wide, trusting eyes, lingered like a bruise. Of course, she had known he was married, but he had always said it was a hollow marriage, an obligation, a dying arrangement, one step from ending. She had believed him, perhaps because it aligned with the fantasy she had built in her head about becoming the next Mrs. Vale. But now, reality struck with a ferocity she wasn't prepared for. A discreet cough pulled her out of her spiraling thoughts. It was Lucas Chang, Grayson's ever-reliable assistant. His expression was sympathetic but resolute. "Miss Petrova," he said quietly, "Mr. Vale would appreciate it if you kept a low profile for the rest of the evening. There's a lot happening. We're trying not to let things spiral further." Alina clenched her jaw. "Low profile? You mean disappear so no one blames me?" Lucas gave a short nod. I believe that would be best for everyone involved." The word scandal hung unspoken between them. Anger surged in her chest, twined with raw humiliation. Part of her wanted to storm back into the party and stake her claim beside Grayson, but shame kept her rooted. Without another word, she brushed past Lucas and headed for a discreet side exit. Being part of this public disaster had become unbearable. If Grayson wanted her gone, at least for now, she would oblige. But she wouldn't forget how he had abandoned her in the eye of the storm. The party trudged on, though its brilliance had been dimmed by scandal. Guests still sipped champagne and nibbled on artfully plated hors d'oeuvres, but conversation had shifted. Tension curled in every corner. More than a few attendees politely thanked whoever was left hosting and slipped out early. Grayson caught sight of Edward Ashford, Camille's father, stepping into the study. Edward was a tall, commanding man known for his charitable empire and deep roots in generational wealth. Though always civil in public, Edward had never fully embraced Grayson, the self-made entrepreneur, marrying his daughter. With a sigh, Grayson followed him into the room, bracing for yet another reckoning. He found Edward quietly inspecting a row of antique books on the walnut-paneled shelves. At the sound of Grayson's steps, Edward turned, his face unreadable. "You've made quite the spectacle out there," Edward said calmly, closing a rare volume on Renaissance architecture. Grayson gave a slight nod. "I'm aware. It wasn't my intention." Edward gave a low chuckle, dry, unimpressed. "Intention or not, this is where we are. Do you have any concept of the damage you've done to Camille's reputation? To your sons? The press is going to devour this for weeks, possibly longer." Grayson ran a hand through his hair. "I know. I'm trying to figure out how to fix it." Edward returned the book to its place with deliberate care. "You should have thought of that before parading around with your distraction. I warned you when you first married Camille, carrying the Ashford name means you carry responsibility, and you've just dropped that weight in front of everyone." He stepped closer, voice lowering but growing sharper. "You've got 3 children now. 2 of them already in need of a father's stability. A third on the way. Camille is no fool. She may be from old money, but she's not someone who stands still and waits." Grayson swallowed hard. "I don't think she's bluffing," Grayson muttered. "She's made it painfully clear. She's at her breaking point." Silence settled between the two men, interrupted only by the distant strains of jazz drifting through the mansion's closed windows. Finally, Edward broke the stillness, locking eyes with Grayson. "If there's any chance left to salvage this, for the sake of those children, take it. That's the only advice I'll offer." Grayson nodded slowly, feeling the full weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Despite Edward's frosty demeanor, there was something unmistakably paternal in his tone. Maybe, just maybe, the old man wasn't only protecting his legacy. Maybe he truly wanted to shield Camille and the children from the chaos. As Edward exited, Grayson remained rooted in place, leaning against the edge of the ornate mahogany desk. Waves of guilt, panic, and paternal love crashed over him. His carefully constructed image, chiseled, controlled, untouchable, was cracking. The only question now, could he repair it? Or was everything about to come undone? Not long after her conversation with her father, Camille made her way to a quiet sitting room in the west wing of the mansion. The twins were there, along with her sister Madeline. The boys, worn out from a long day of travel and the emotional roller coaster of the evening, had finally fallen asleep on a velvet couch. Madeline sat beside them, a storybook still open in her lap. She looked up as Camille entered and gently closed the book. "They just nodded off," she whispered. "All the excitement? It was a lot." Camille gave a grateful nod. She looked down at her sons, one curled around a stuffed dinosaur, the other resting his head on his brother's shoulder. Scenes like this reminded her that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for their stability, their peace. "How are you holding up?" Madeline asked softly, concern in every syllable. Though younger by 2 years, Madeline often slipped into a protective role. Camille had always been the poised one, the picture-perfect Ashford daughter. But tonight, her armor had cracked. Camille exhaled, pressing a hand to her temple. "I'm furious, exhausted, and I have no idea what comes next. But I'm done hiding. I won't raise 3 children in secret while he plays house with his mistress." Madeline rested a steady hand on her arm. "You have every right to feel that way. But you need a plan. Grayson may be reckless, but he's still their father. You need to think ahead, for their sake." Camille nodded, her eyes stinging. "I know, I can't just cut him out, but I can't let them grow up in a toxic home either. I need a lawyer, at the very least. Maybe a separation agreement, something that protects the kids." Madeline winced slightly. "Divorce?" Camille bit her lower lip. She had sworn she'd hold her marriage together. She had believed in their love, but tonight, watching Grayson parade Alina through their world, had made something inside her fracture. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I need security, for me and for them. And Grayson, he might try to salvage his reputation by turning this into a fight. I won't let that happen." Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Camille motioned for Madeline to open it, careful not to disturb the sleeping twins. To their surprise, it was Lucas Chang. He gave a respectful nod. "Mrs. Vale, Miss Ashford, apologies for the interruption. Mr. Vale has asked if you'd be willing to speak with him, privately." Camille's jaw tensed. She looked at her boys, peaceful, oblivious. Madeline leaned in with quiet reassurance. "I've got them," she whispered. "Go. Handle what you need to." Camille followed Lucas down the corridor, her thoughts racing. She would hear Grayson out, but this time on her terms. No more illusions, no more manipulation. Whether he liked it or not, her life and the lives of her children would no longer orbit his curated image. Every footstep echoed like a reckoning. She wasn't just a scorned wife now, she was a mother bearing the weight of 3 futures. Each breath she took was not just her own, but for Liam, for Caleb, for the unborn child who hadn't even opened her eyes to this world. Camille walked with the quiet composure of a woman who had already made peace with the worst outcome. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about clarity. Lucas led her to a smaller, cozier sitting room where a fireplace crackled softly. Grayson stood near the mantel, still in his tuxedo, though now it looked wrinkled, defeated. His once immaculate hair was slightly tousled. The easy confidence he once wore like a second skin had given way to something more human, regret. He waited until Lucas left, the door closing with a quiet click behind them. Camille stood across from him, arms folded protectively over her belly. Grayson spoke first, his voice deliberate. "I want to apologize, for all of it, for cheating, for distancing myself, for not being there when you needed me." Her expression didn't budge. Apology noted. "Now what?" He took a small step forward, his tone careful, but pleading. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose Liam or Caleb or the baby. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, I'll even scale back work, cut ties with anyone if I have to." A dry, bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Therapy? You think this is something we can patch up in 6 sessions? She shook her head. You didn't just cheat, you humiliated me, publicly. You brought her into our home, our life, and then lied every step of the way. Grayson swallowed hard, eyes searching hers. I know, I don't have a defense. I just want you to know I regret it, deeply. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. Regret doesn't erase what you did. I don't even know if I believe you anymore. You've fractured something that might not be fixable. I need time. Her voice trembled for just a second, a single crack in an otherwise iron-willed facade. But even in that flicker of vulnerability, she held her ground. She wasn't there to be soothed or swayed. She was there to reclaim her voice. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back instinctively. He lowered his arm, defeated. I'll give you time, he said quietly. As much as you need. Just, please don't take them away from me without letting me be their father. She let out a slow breath, gaze drifting toward the fire. I'll consider it, but I'm also taking legal steps. I won't be caught off guard if you try to spin the story. There'll be a custody agreement, financial arrangements, everything laid out. I won't leave our children vulnerable. Grayson nodded solemnly. That's fair. But let me prove I can be better, before you shut me out completely. Camille arched an eyebrow, unmoved. That's on you, Grayson, Camille said, voice cracking with restrained emotion. I won't wait around forever, especially not when I'm about to bring another child into this chaos. The air between them thickened. The flames from the fireplace cast flickering shadows across their faces, drawing attention to the pain carved into both their expressions. For a long beat, neither spoke. The gravity of everything that had transpired weighed heavily in the silence. At last, Camille turned toward the door. We'll talk more, but not tonight. I need rest. My boys need rest. You can see them in the morning, quietly, and without turning it into another performance. Grayson nodded, her words echoing in the space she left behind. He remained there, motionless, staring into the fire, wondering if he had already lost the only people who had ever truly mattered. By morning, the world had already decided. Headlines were merciless. Paparazzi photos from the night before flooded tabloids and gossip sites. Sensational headlines screamed, Grayson Vale's secret family exposed, and wife plus twins babies public meltdown at Vale Gala. Social media churned with blurry video clips showing Camille's dramatic arrival, the confrontation, the whispers. Even respected outlets like the San Francisco Tribune ran a brief piece acknowledging the chaos at the Brighton estate. In a society where image often overshadowed substance, Grayson found himself in a precarious situation. Investors demanded reassurance that Vale equity wouldn't be derailed by personal scandal. Clients expressed quiet concern over reputational fallout. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls from board members, PR specialists, and opportunistic friends offering unsolicited advice. In his home office, just down the hall from the lavish master bedroom Camille now refused to sleep in, Grayson tried to stay calm. He had summoned his publicist, Harriet Bloom, to help strategize. Harriet, a blunt woman in her 40s with a reputation for cleaning up celebrity messes, looked unusually strained as she scrolled through coverage on her tablet. This is bad, she admitted, setting the screen down. But not hopeless. We craft a message around remorse. You're a father first. You're stepping back from the spotlight. You want privacy to protect your family. Tie it all to your philanthropic work. That might buy some goodwill. Grayson frowned. And Alina? Harriet's lips pressed into a thin line. She's unpredictable. Right now, the public sees her as the villain. Some will call her a gold digger. Others will say she was misled. Either way, it's messy. Ideally, she stays silent. But we'll need a statement from her or about her. Grayson exhaled slowly, remembering the shattered look in Alina's eyes the night before. I have to speak to her. We can't just pretend she doesn't exist. Harriet tapped her pen against a notepad. You can, unless you're thinking about continuing the relationship. Are you? Grayson stood abruptly, pushing back from his desk. I don't know what I'm thinking right now. I'm just trying to stop my family from falling apart. He paused, dragging a hand through his hair. Maybe you're right. The less said publicly about Alina, the better. I'll handle the personal side, privately. Harriet nodded. Good. I'll prepare an official statement. Focus on remorse, dignity, and protect your children from media fallout. Keep the drama out of the public arena. As Harriet left, the pressure of holding up appearances felt heavier than ever. One slip, one misstep, and Grayson could lose not only investors or deals, but the fragile respect of his children. Meanwhile, across town, Alina paced inside her sleek high-rise apartment overlooking downtown San Francisco. The space was pristine and elegant, full of the comforts Grayson had provided: designer furnishings, gallery-tier artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views. But tonight, none of it mattered. She scrolled through her phone, face tightening at the barrage of hate flooding her feed. Homewrecker, gold digger, disgrace. She threw the phone onto the couch, fists clenched against the scream building in her throat. To the world, she was the villain now. And the worst part? She hadn't meant to be. She reached for a wine glass and poured a heavy serving of red. Taking a long sip, she tried to steady her nerves. The affair had started with heat and whirlwind attraction. But it hadn't stayed simple for long. Now the truth was out, and she was exposed, completely alone. Deep down, a part of her knew this was inevitable. Grayson was too visible for secrecy to last. Her phone buzzed. A message from Grayson. "We need to talk. Please don't speak to the press. I'll come by tomorrow morning." She stared at the screen, irritation flaring. Now he wanted to dictate her next move. But her rational side pushed through the emotion. Going public would only escalate things. It might even damage her chances at rebuilding. She typed a quick, cold reply, "Fine," then tossed the phone aside. The truth settled like a weight in her chest. If she and Grayson had no future, she needed to carve her own. She had skills, connections, experience, credibility in elite circles. Maybe she could pivot, build something on her own, independent of his shadow. Still, the heartbreak cut deep. She had believed Grayson cared. But now, after seeing Camille, pregnant, composed, unshakable, Alina was forced to face the scale of what she'd done and what she'd lost. She stared at her reflection in the glass, the glittering skyline of San Francisco behind her, cold and distant, unmoved by her inner chaos. "What have I done?" Alina whispered, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The question hung in the air, unanswered and agonizing. Back at the estate, Camille stirred early to the quiet shuffling of small feet. Liam and Caleb padded into her temporary guest room, decorated in soft, neutral tones, and climbed onto the bed. "Mom," Liam asked, rubbing his eyes, "can we see Dad now?" Camille hesitated. Her anger hadn't faded, but she couldn't deny them their father. A soft knock broke the silence. Madeline peeked in. "Good morning," she said gently. "I can take the boys to the garden for breakfast if you'd like." Camille nodded. "That would be perfect, thank you." She turned to the twins. "Go with Aunt Madeline, sweethearts. I'll be down in a bit." The boys scrambled off, their excitement about exploring the garden eclipsing the adult tension swirling beneath the surface. Left alone, Camille rested a hand on her belly and took a deep breath. Sleep had eluded her. The confrontation with Grayson replayed in her mind on a constant loop, but she had to stay composed, for their children's sake. She changed into a light sundress and headed downstairs. Grayson was already seated at the long dining table, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked up the instant she entered, a hesitant smile tugging at his lips. "Good morning," he offered. She gave a slight nod, formal and reserved. "Morning." He motioned toward the empty chair across from him. "Would you like some coffee? Tea?" "I'll get it myself." "Thanks." She crossed to the sideboard, poured herself a mug of herbal tea and took a seat opposite him. Silence stretched between them, tense and electric. Finally, she broke it. "The boys want to see you. I don't want them sensing anything's wrong. At least not yet, so let's keep things civil." Grayson nodded. "Of course. I'll do whatever it takes to keep things stable for them." She studied him for a long moment. The fatigue around his eyes was unmistakable. "What are you going to do about Alina?" He exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping to his cup. "I'm going to end it, if that's what you're asking. Not just for optics, but because I see now how wrong it was. There's nothing lasting there. Maybe there never was. It was selfish and delusional." Part of Camille felt a flicker of relief. Another part stayed guarded. "We'll see if your actions match your words." Grayson nodded again, accepting the doubt without protest. "Fair enough." After a moment, he asked quietly, "And you, the baby? Are you staying here or going back to Europe?" Grayson asked quietly. Camille hesitated. "I haven't decided. For now, the boys and I will stay in San Francisco. They deserve to know their father. But long-term, that depends on whether you show you can prioritize us, not your ego. His chest tightened. I will, he said, voice steady. I promise. Just then, Liam and Caleb burst into the room, animated with excitement. Dad, Caleb called, tugging on Grayson's sleeve. Come quick! There's a big blue butterfly in the garden. Grayson smiled, a surge of gratitude sweeping over him. Sure, buddy, let's go check it out. He looked to Camille, who gave a small nod of approval. As he followed the boys into the sunlit morning, long shadows stretched across the polished floor, a quiet reminder of the emotional terrains still ahead. Watching their small feet patter across the tiles, Grayson felt something shift deep inside him. Not guilt, not shame, something quieter, weightier, purpose. The boy's laughter echoed through the hallway like a distant memory he was trying to reclaim. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing a deal or a headline or an image. He was chasing butterflies with his sons. And yet, as they disappeared into the garden, a strange hollowness tugged at him. The laughter belonged to a world he was trying to re-enter, but hadn't yet earned. There were moments like this one, when he stood at the threshold of his own family, feeling like a guest in their joy. Would Camille ever truly let him back in? Would the boys remember the months he hadn't been there, or the days he was trying now to make count? In the weeks that followed, a tentative rhythm emerged. Camille remained at the estate, staying in a guest suite with the twins, while Grayson kept his distance in the main wing. They structured their days around the boys, sharing parenting time while avoiding unnecessary personal interaction. Beneath the civility, tension still simmered, but both knew their children came first. Grayson's team, led by Harriet Bloom, released a carefully crafted public statement emphasizing his commitment to family, fatherhood, and healing. Online buzz didn't slow. Was Camille filing for divorce? Would the scandal ruin his legacy? Conspiracies swirled, some even suggesting Camille's dramatic entrance had been orchestrated to secure her place in Grayson's empire. But many sympathized with her. A poised, pregnant wife, blindsided by her husband's betrayal. Meanwhile, Grayson ended things with Alina once and for all. He arrived at her apartment early one morning, trying to avoid attention. She opened the door slowly, arms crossed, her face a storm of sadness and fury. So, you finally showed up, she said, stepping aside. Inside, the apartment was chaotic, half-packed suitcases, clothes strewn across furniture. She was preparing to leave. I'm sorry, he began, unsure what else to say. You're sorry you got caught, she snapped. Grayson opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. She was right. We were both responsible, Alina. I won't pretend what we had wasn't real, in its own way. But my family needs me now. My children need me. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And what about me? I gave up everything for you. I trusted you. Now I'm left with nothing but public humiliation. He nodded, guilt rising like a tide. I'm truly sorry. If there's anything I can do, references, support. She raised her hand sharply. Stop. I don't want your hush money, Alina said, her voice trembling. I'll figure things out on my own. She wiped at her eyes and drew in a shaky breath. Just go. And if you ever cared about me at all, let me move on. Don't drag me back into your mess. Grayson looked at her one last time, regret etched into every line of his face. Then he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him with a quiet finality. With Alina out of the picture, Grayson redirected his energy toward rebuilding trust with Camille. He attended every prenatal appointment, helped with the boys' daily routines, reading bedtime stories, walking them to their new private school, cheering at their soccer games. The estate slowly transformed. No longer a cold monument to success, it began to feel like a home again, a tense home, but one where healing felt faintly possible. One afternoon, Grayson found Camille sitting quietly in the garden, watching Liam and Caleb chase butterflies around the fountains. Her hand rested absently on her belly, her eyes distant. He approached slowly, hands tucked into his pockets. You're doing a great job with them, he said softly. They're so happy to have you around. She nodded, gaze still focused on the boys. They deserve stability, and I can't deny they love being with you. Every child wants that. Grayson sank onto the bench beside her. After a long pause, he gently placed his hand over hers. I know I hurt you, he said, voice low, in a way that might never fully heal. But I'm here, and I'm not walking away. I want to do better. Please, believe that. For the first time in weeks, she glanced at him, and in her eyes, he saw a glimmer, just the smallest crack in her walls. "I want to believe it," she whispered, "but I also need to protect myself from more pain." He inhaled deeply. "Then let's take it slow. Separate rooms, set schedules, whatever it takes. But I'm not giving up." Silence returned as they watched their boys giggle and sprint across the garden. The moment was peaceful, a fragile calm in the aftermath of chaos. While Grayson tried to restore his family, Vale Equity faced its own storm. The scandal had unsettled some of the firm's most prestigious clients. A few accounts quietly withdrew, citing restructuring or delays, in truth distancing themselves from Grayson's imploding public image. One afternoon, Harriet Bloom convened an emergency board meeting to discuss damage control. Grayson sat at the head of the conference table, suited sharply, jaw tight with focus. Harriet began. "Client retention is down 5% this quarter. Confidence has dipped across key accounts. We need a public show of stability. Reassure stakeholders that Vale Equity is steady and committed to excellence." Leonard Drake, an elder statesman of the board and one of Grayson's earliest supporters, leaned forward. "Grayson, this is serious. We're considering appointing a co-CEO, someone to help absorb some of the scrutiny while you manage things at home." Grayson stiffened. "A co-CEO? You're talking about sidelining me." Leonard shook his head. "No, we're talking about protecting the company. Nothing is decided. But you need to understand, the optics matter." "It's just a discussion," Harriet said, measured. "But rumors are already swirling. Investors are wondering if this scandal could bring lawsuits or more negative press." Grayson's jaw tightened. Deep down, he knew stepping back might be necessary. But surrendering control, even temporarily, felt like failure. "I understand the concern," he said carefully, "but I'm still capable of managing both my family and this company. Let me prove that." Harriet cleared her throat. "We should at least consider a partial transition. Perhaps Marcus Green, your CFO, could take over day-to-day operations for a time. That would show stability." Grayson exchanged glances with Harriet and Leonard. The idea of compromise didn't sit well, but he knew resistance would only fuel doubt. "All right," he said at last. "I'll speak with Marcus, but I'm not stepping away entirely. I built Vale Equity from the ground up." Around the table, reluctant nods followed. The meeting ended, but Grayson left feeling boxed in. Still, if stepping back meant preserving the company and regaining time to repair his family, it might be the right move. Maybe the only one. That evening, after a long day, Grayson wandered out to the pool. The staff had cleaned the area, and the water mirrored the night sky in quiet stillness. He spotted Camille reclined on a lounge chair, wrapped in a soft shawl, watching the water ripple beneath the moonlight. He sat beside her without a word. Silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of traffic echoing through the hills. "Rough day?" Camille asked at last, noting the tension on his face. Grayson exhaled. "Board meeting. They're talking about me stepping back. Think I've lost the ability to lead." She nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I'm sorry. I know how much the company means to you." He dragged a hand down his face. "It's everything I built. But maybe they're right. Maybe I need to focus on what I've been neglecting." He paused. "If I can still call this, us, a family." She looked at the water, carefully choosing her words. "I've spoken with a lawyer about a legal separation. Not a divorce yet, but I need to protect myself and the kids, in case you slip back into old habits." He nodded, the words landing with a familiar ache. "I get it. I won't fight anything that ensures they're safe." Finally, she turned to him. Her voice trembled slightly. "I used to picture us growing old in this house, watching grandkids play on the lawn. Now, I don't know if that future still exists." Grayson reached for her hand. To his relief, she didn't pull away. "I still want that too," he whispered. "Let me prove it. Let me earn it." A single tear slid down Camille's cheek. "I'm scared, Grayson. Scared you'll hurt me again, or fail our children." He gently squeezed her hand. "I'm scared too, but I promise I'll try harder than I ever have." They sat there in silence, hands entwined, as moonlight danced across the pool's surface. It wasn't resolution, but it was a spark, and after everything, even a spark felt like a miracle. As Camille's pregnancy progressed, she arranged a baby shower at Madeline's estate in Beverly Hills. Only close friends and family were invited, kept tightly under wraps from the media. Grayson offered to attend, But Camille had asked Grayson to respect her space, and at the baby shower, he honored that request, even if it pained him to stay away. The afternoon unfolded in calm celebration. Guests mingled among pastel-colored decorations, soft jazz drifting through the air. Camille's mother, Helena Ashford, moved through the event with practiced grace, ensuring every detail, from the floral arrangements to the petit fours, was flawless. Camille slipped away to a quieter corner of the garden, where she found her father, Edward, calmly sipping a cup of tea. He smiled as she approached. "You look radiant," he said softly. "How are you holding up?" She placed her hand on her belly. "Doing my best to make the right decisions. We're trying to keep things civil." Edward nodded, his approval subtle but sincere. "That's wise. Just know, your mother and I support you, no matter what path you take." Camille swallowed, a lump catching in her throat. That quiet affirmation meant everything, love over reputation. "Thank you," she whispered. Later, after the final guests had left, Madeline helped her gather baby gifts. Among the pastel-wrapped presents was a small envelope addressed in Grayson's familiar handwriting. Camille's breath caught as she opened it. Inside was a letter. "Camille, you asked me to stay away today, so I did, but I hope you'll accept this small gesture. Enclosed is the deed to the Malibu house, in your name only. I want you to have a space that's yours, without conditions or expectations. I hope you see this as my first step toward earning back your trust. Always, Grayson." Her hands trembled. The Malibu beach house, an architectural gem overlooking the Pacific, had always been one of Grayson's most prized properties. To sign it over to her, no strings attached, was a powerful gesture of remorse, a tangible act of goodwill. Tears welled in Camille's eyes. She didn't know whether to be touched or cautious, but it was something real. In the following weeks, a delicate peace began to settle. True to his word, Grayson stepped back from daily operations at Vail Equity, allowing Marcus Green to serve as interim CEO. He shifted his focus toward the family, showing up for aquarium trips with the twins and baby shopping with Camille. Their exchanges remained measured. But here and there, a shared look, a soft laugh, flickers of warmth returned. One night, Camille stood outside the boys' room, listening to Grayson read bedtime stories. His voice was gentle, affectionate. For a fleeting moment, she saw him not as the man who had broken her trust, but the man who once built their life from scratch. After tucking the twins in, Grayson found her leaning quietly against the hallway wall. "They really do adore you," she said softly. "It's good to see." He smiled faintly. "They keep me grounded, remind me what matters." She nodded. "I see that." "Thank you," she added, "for being here, for them." A hush fell over them, filled with all the questions they hadn't yet asked, about love, trust, and the future. Finally, Grayson spoke. "How are you feeling? You're in your third trimester now, right?" Camille sighed, one hand instinctively cradling her belly. "Yes, and I'm exhausted. I might move to the Malibu house soon," Camille said quietly. "Just for the ocean air and space. The city feels suffocating." Grayson swallowed, trying to mask the sting of disappointment. "I understand. I can come on weekends to see the boys, or whenever you feel comfortable." She nodded, no malice in her expression. "That might be best. We'll figure it out." Their exchange was calm, almost tender, but carried the weight of all that had passed. Sometimes moving forward meant stepping apart. Over the next few months, Camille relocated to the Malibu house with Liam and Caleb, preparing for the baby's arrival. Grayson visited regularly, deepening his bond with the twins. Gradually, Camille began letting him back into small parts of her routine, cooking together, family movie nights, the occasional late-night conversation. As her due date neared, life found a tentative rhythm. One afternoon, while walking barefoot along the shoreline with the twins, Camille's contractions started suddenly. With Madeline's quick help, she was rushed to a nearby hospital. Grayson, upon hearing the news, broke speed limits racing to get there. Her labor was long and intense. He remained by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. The room crackled with tension, with fear, and something else. A closeness neither of them had felt in years. Camille gritted through the pain, but it wasn't just physical. Somewhere between contractions, between clenched breaths and trembling fingers, she allowed herself to glance at him, really glance. His eyes were filled not with performance or persuasion, but with panic and prayer. And in that moment, she saw the man he once was. The man she hoped he could be again. There had been a moment, brief but sharp, when the monitors spiked and Camille let out a cry that froze him in place. His hands trembled, his breath caught, he felt utterly useless. The memories of polished speeches and boardroom wins evaporated. None of that could help here. Here, it was raw. Real. He had to remind himself to breathe, to stay present. For her. For their child. And when her hand tightened around his, he held on like a lifeline, whispering steady words not for her but for himself. And then, finally, the sharp cry of a newborn filled the room. A baby girl. As Camille cradled their daughter, tears streaming down her cheeks, Grayson leaned in and pressed a kiss to her temple. In that moment, sweaty, exhausted and elated, they felt more united than they had in a very long time. Outside, Liam and Caleb waited with Madeline, bouncing on their heels. When Grayson stepped into the hall and told them they had a baby sister, their cheers echoed down the corridor. Madeline hugged Grayson tightly, tears in her own eyes. For the first time in years, the Vale family felt whole. Life at the Malibu beach house settled into something peaceful. Camille embraced motherhood again, the ocean breeze and rolling surf offering a kind of healing that no doctor could prescribe. Grayson, now a steady and devoted presence, helped with midnight feedings, school pickups, and sandy beach adventures. Though he remained in a guest suite, his consistent presence said more than any apology ever could. One moonlit night, Camille joined him by the balcony overlooking the waves. Her voice was soft, trembling slightly. "I see the effort, the patience. I'm willing to try." She reached out and took his hand. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cinematic, but it was real. Together they side by side, watching the tide roll in, knowing that rebuilding trust would take time. As months passed, the media frenzy faded. Vale equity stabilized under Marcus Green's calm leadership. Grayson resumed a limited role, finally learning to balance ambition with presence. Camille and Grayson began attending counseling, slowly stitching together the torn fabric of their relationship. They walked together, pushing baby Aurora's stroller, taught Liam and Caleb to ride bikes, laughed again, not perfectly but honestly. The scandal that once shattered everything became the spark for something more profound. Not glamorous redemption, but true clarity. It wasn't magic, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was daily effort, quiet resilience. Forgiveness earned through time and intention. Their story, once splashed across tabloids, became something deeper. A rebirth, not born from perfection, but from truth. In the end, life's storms don't always sink us. Sometimes they carry us to new shores. Grayson and Camille had every reason to walk away, to let pride and betrayal be the final chapter. But they chose something harder. They chose redemption. Not overnight, not without scars, but with commitment, with raw honesty, and with the bond of parenthood that tethered them to something bigger than themselves. In time, their bruised hearts found the strength to trust again. And together, they stepped into a future, imperfect but brighter than either had dared hope. What a journey, right? And if you're still here with me now, dear friends, that means something about this story must have stirred something in your heart. Maybe it was the shattered trust, maybe the silent pain of betrayal, or maybe it was that fragile, slow rebuild of love after everything had fallen apart. Whatever it was, you stayed. And that means we're already looking at this from a shared place of honesty. So let's reflect, through the lens of no right, no wrong. Just truth. This story teaches us that healing doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It begins in quiet moments, showing up for bedtime stories, sitting beside someone who no longer trusts you but still lets you in. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, said Seneca. And how true that rings here. The fear of loss, the echo of shame, it all feels overwhelming, but when we face it, we begin to free ourselves. Grayson and Camille remind us that love isn't about flawless loyalty. It's about how we respond when things break. Camille didn't choose bitterness. She chose boundaries. Grayson didn't hide behind power. He chose presence. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Marcus Aurelius couldn't have said it better. Sometimes, storms don't destroy us. They bring us to new shores. And if this story touched something deep within you, let us know in the comments. Tell us what moment struck you most. Before you dive into the next tale, like, share, and subscribe. You never know who might need a story like this. A reminder that redemption is messy, but it's still possible. Turn on your notifications, because the next chapter might just be the one you didn't know you needed. We'll see you there.